When asked what surprised him about humanity the most, the Dalai Lama is said to have replied, "Man." Because he sacrifices his health to make money, then he sacrifices his money to recuperate his health. And then he is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. The result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he is never going to die, and dies having never really lived.
Well, I think for some of us to wake up, we need a wake-up call.
When I was 26, I got a huge wake-up call. It was stage 3 colon cancer.
I was in a triathlon, and I was on the biking portion of the race. When I landed, I broke 6 vertebrae in my spine.
I was working in the corporate world at the time in a very high-stress, 6-figure job. I was on 8 prescription drugs.
Many struggles on the court, respiratory problems, inability to cope with the heat, endurance issues. But I was feeling that I'm losing that kind of fuel in my tank. So then I had to, sit down, rethink what is going on.
People have seen the movie The Matrix, and they say, oh, that's a science fiction movie. And I go, no, The Matrix is a documentary. We've all been programmed.
I can tell if somebody is trapped in conformity by looking at their first 60 minutes this morning. If you wake up and you do what 86% of smartphone owners do, they grab their phone, they look at it, and they go into the social media, they go into their email, they go into their text, their voice message, or games, and they're starting their day in reaction. We were taught in the 80s and the 90s, which was basically consumerism, which was attain power, money, wealth, status, and you'll feel good.
We take goals belong to society, we take goals belong to our parents, we take goals that we think and justify and rationalize that we need in order to be happy.
The problem is, the culturescape keeps engulfing us and telling us that we need a college degree, we need to get a good career, we need to work from 9 to 5 so that someday we can finally retire and see the world. The culturescape was designed to keep us safe, but it was never designed to keep us happy.
Today's world is 24/7, 365 stress. Our biology was never designed to be in perpetual stress.
And if that isn't corrected over time, what can happen is it starts autoimmune disease.
It's a scientific fact that the long-term effects of the hormones of stress downregulate genes to create disease.
And that stress hormone is constantly in the modern man, and we are working ourselves even to burnout.
We all know the world is in tremendous crisis and peril today.
People are overwhelmed and they don't know how to process it. So they're saying, where else can I look?
So I learned to deal with that, to go past that. That made me able to swim under the ice or run marathons barefoot or climb Mount Everest, Kilimanjaro, all in shorts. We are able to go back to the depth of our physiology, far more than scientifically stated, to prevent from disease, prevent from depression, to have a lot more control over your life. Happiness, strength, and health. Those are the most important assets of life.
Your life can shift dramatically in an empowered way if you learn how to control your emotions.
After that, I felt so strong as a tennis player on the court, and I recovered better. I had more endurance, I had more clarity of mind. All of a sudden, the horizons of life opened up to me. Regardless of profession, everybody wants to be healthy and thrive in well-being.
We are, all of us, without exception, sitting on top of mountains of untapped human potential.
All great things begin on the inside.
It begins with transcending your fear-based belief systems because you begin to create momentum, and that momentum can really begin to change your life.
Now is the time to take our passions and our quirks and our visions and bring them out into the world, because there never will be another one of us.
I was 4 or 5 years old when the first war that I was living in happened. And in the next 9 or 10 years, Serbia has been through a lot of economical trouble. It was, torn by the bombings later on in the 90s, and embargo, sanctions, people waiting in line for just most basic things, most common things like bread and milk. My family fought for €1 each day, going undergrounds in the shelters, to basically seek for some kind of safety, because you never knew what is going to happen next. One of the most dramatic experiences I've had with my family was in '99 when we've been through day and night, 2.5 months of bombing, and it wasn't easy, not just for us, but for the entire country. We didn't know what tomorrow brings. We didn't know whether or not we were going to still live, because the planes were flying all over our heads. We're waking up every single night for 2 months and just praying and hoping that, there's going to be an end of that, just behind the corner, because war never brought good to anybody, whether you're historically on a winning or losing side. Nobody has ever touched a tennis racket prior to me in my family, so there was no tradition, no heritage of that sport. When I was 4 years old, to have 3 tennis courts being built just in front of the restaurant that my parents were owning. From when I was 4 to 7, I was mostly involved in school tennis with kids and just playing around the court, being in the big groups of children. It was a play, it was a game, it was fun. When I was 7, I think that's the first time that I really had a clear vision of what I want to achieve and who I want to become in tennis. I just knew I want to become #1 and win Wimbledon, and I had such a clear vision in my mind. I was even creating this Wimbledon trophy out of some plastic materials and just little paper, and just trying to create visions and images in my mind, and create something that would serve as a motivation and inspiration for my life. I've experienced, prior to 2010 Australian Open, many struggles on the court, respiratory problems, inability to cope with the heat, endurance issues. Even though I was training hard, I was feeling that I'm losing that kind of fuel in my tank. I was feeling weaker, and then all of a sudden the vision it became different. I didn't see the court as wide as it was at the beginning of the match, and I had blurred vision. I couldn't catch breath after each point was finished, and in no time he was a winner of the match. And I remember that between 4th and 5th set, I went out to throw up, and felt my stomach was aching. I felt my energy was so low, and my nose was blocked, and there was plenty of things going on. And that was not the first time. I didn't understand that there is this nutrition part that was blocking me in a way, because I wasn't eating correctly, even though I thought that I was.
Songa leads by 4-1.
Coming from the culture where we're based a lot on the gluten, which is in the wheat, and we have bakeries in each corner. So I had breads and different bread baskets each day, even eating pizza, and I would have a little bread on the side. That's how, you know, integrated that kind of culture of eating was in our region. And also a lot of meat and sugar, you know, refined sugar. I didn't know that would cause, all of these things would cause that kind of, you know, a feeling of being helpless on the court and feeling of being powerless. So then I met Dr. Igor Cvetojevic, and he has actually watched that match in Australian Open earlier that year, and he felt the need to get in touch with me and to help me out. And he received the data that I have a great sensitivity on gluten, no celiac disease, but great sensitivity, intolerance to gluten, to dairy products, and obviously to refined sugar. I had to, you know, sit down, rethink, you know, what is going on.
If you see an insectivorous toad, a toad that likes to eat insects, he's happy. If you see a cow that likes to graze, that's what it's adapted to eating, grass and fodder. What if you gave it instead shellfish to eat, or something it's unfamiliar with? It'd probably be very sick quite quickly. What if you don't like the fact that lions kill gazelle and wildebeests and eat their organs and eat their meat to survive, and you made them eat spinach and kale? You have a dead lion. Same with humans. We follow an adaptive script and diet. And if you veer off that script, funny things happen. That funny thing could be called obesity. It could be called type 2 diabetes. It could be called autoimmune disease. It could be dementia. It could be cancer. It could be your performance will degrade. It could be any number of other hundreds to thousands of human conditions that are almost unknown in populations that follow the dietary script to which we're adapted. And that's when I started to poke around into agribusiness and agricultural genetics to see what happened to wheat in particular. This applies to more than wheat, but I picked on wheat, which is I call it the ringleader. Well, digging, it became clear that what we're being sold today as modern wheat is something entirely different than what it was 40 years ago. So there was a very noble effort, not a dishonest or evil effort, but a noble effort to increase the yield per acre to help feed the world's hungry.
And now a new nationwide wheat breeding program was underway. Used McFadden's Hope wheat as the basis for the rust-resistant, high-quality wheats we know today. And so one more threat to the nation's bread supply was brought under control. Once more, science penetrated the secrets of nature.
But in those efforts, they bred wheat over and over and over again with various strains. They bred wheat. Wheat is a grass. They bred wheat with other wild grasses to extract certain genetic characteristics. And then they started to subject wheat to other methods, such as the methods of mutagenesis, the purposeful induction of mutations using toxic chemicals, radiation, gamma rays, etc. Problem, you can't control the mutations you get. You can't order up the mutation you want, say for better pest resistance or a reduced height. You just get this dozens, perhaps hundreds of mutations. If they're not fatal, the plant survives, but you've induced numerous mutations. So wheat is now what's no longer a 4.5 foot, 5 foot tall, 2 meter tall traditional plant. It's an 18-inch tall, short, thick, stocky, semi-dwarf strain, they call it. So that change in appearance is accompanied by multiple changes in its genetics, in its biochemistry, in the proteins in particular that are expressed. And when products made with high-yield semi-dwarf wheat were put on store shelves around 1985 to late 80s, that's when we saw an explosion in numerous problems. It coincides perfectly with a dramatic increase in calorie intake in Australia, US, Western Europe, UK. It coincides perfectly with an explosion in autoimmune diseases and in type 2 diabetes and obesity. Now that doesn't prove cause and effect, but I'm pretty well convinced it is probably a cause and effect.
The wheat we're eating is not the wheat we ate. It's not the bread of our ancestors, which has many more proteins that create inflammation that are gluten proteins. It also has a much higher starch content. In fact, 2 tablespoons of sugar raises your blood sugar less than 2 slices of whole wheat bread. So we now know that the kind of wheat we're eating is very inflammatory, that we know that this can disrupt the gut lining. So looking at celiac disease. 50 years ago, they had blood samples on 10,000 people looking at celiac disease, and they compared it to a blood sample of 10,000 people today, and there was a real increase of 400% in celiac disease. So this is not a fad. This is a real phenomena that's a result of the increased use of antibiotics, the lack of breastfeeding, the processed food, and the chronic stresses, environmental toxins, all colluding to drive disruptions in the gut function, which allows the gluten to actually break through and create the systemic inflammation.
Dr. Holland and Fasano at Harvard published a study that shows when humans eat wheat, every human that eats wheat, not just the celiacs, but every human that eats wheat gets tears in the inside lining of the gut every time they're exposed to wheat.
We now know through clinical research, it is an absolute that autoimmune disease begins in the gut. Just as Hippocrates said over 2,000 years ago, all disease begins in the gut, so does autoimmune disease. So with autoimmune disease, here's really how it works is there's a barrier in between your bloodstream and your intestines. It's called your gut lining. And your gut lining has microscopic, these little holes in it. What can happen over time if somebody has intestinal inflammation, large holes open up in your gut lining.
Some cells turn over very quickly, like the inside lining of the gut. Every 3 to 7 days, you have a whole new lining to your gut. It's like the skin of a snake, just kind of sheds right off. So you had toast for breakfast, it heals. You have a sandwich for lunch, it heals. Pasta for dinner, it heals. Croutons on your salad, it heals. A cookie, but it heals day after week, after month, after year, after year, after year, until one day you don't heal anymore. Now, when you don't heal, that's pathogenic intestinal permeability. And these tears can occur and stay torn when you lose tolerance and you don't heal anymore when you're 2 years old, 22 years old, 72 years old. It just depends on when you cross that threshold as to when this happens, but it happens.
So what can happen now is undigested food particles such as gluten, casein, toxins, bad bacteria, candida can leak from the intestines into the bloodstream. Your body says those shouldn't be here. It starts this immune response. And if that isn't corrected over time, what can happen is it starts autoimmune disease. And it can affect that systemic inflammation can affect the joints, causing rheumatoid arthritis. It can affect the thyroid, causing Hashimoto's thyroiditis. It can affect the colon, causing things like Crohn's disease, or the muscles, causing fibromyalgia. So really, all autoimmune disease is first caused by leaky gut. It starts in the gut lining. You know, I really believe the biggest factors that are causing this gut reaction are, number one, it's certain foods, refined grain products. Sugar is a big one. Sugar feeds candida and yeast in your body, which causes this issue. Genetically modified organisms, they're wired with pesticides and viruses, which kill off beneficial microbes in the gut, causing leaky gut and autoimmune disease. Also looking at hydrogenated oils. Artificial sweeteners are a big one. All of these things contribute to leaky gut.
So if you have any inflammatory condition, or really any chronic condition, gluten should be at the top of your list in thinking about why. Whether it's an autoimmune disease, digestive disorders, depression, neurologic issues, many of these things are driven through gluten. And by doing an elimination diet, you can often see the impact. And we've seen athletes like Djokovic, who's actually accelerated his career by removing inflammatory foods like gluten and dairy and sugar, and seeing him go from near the bottom of the pile of professional tennis players to #1 and unbeatable.
I just needed that information about the change of the diet and nutrition. And it's with that change in 2010 and the years after that, I felt so strong as a tennis player on the court, and I recovered better. I had more endurance, I had more clarity of mind. All of a sudden, all the horizons of life opened up to me. The circumstances in life that I've had after that were phenomenal.
Now, it's championship point. He's the new world #1 in every sense. And he deserves it. After the year that he's had, he came in here as many people's favourite, and now he has proved it.
It's really hard to describe this with any words except the best day of my life, the most special day of my life. This is my favorite tournament, the tournament I always dreamed of winning. The first tennis tournament that I ever watched in my life. I mean, I think I'm still sleeping, I'm still having my dream. And
you've got the Wimbledon trophy in your hands, and 2 days ago you knew you'd be the world #1. It hasn't been a bad few days, has it?
Couple of good days in the office, yeah.
Wimbledon champion, Novak Djokovic.
I've seen this play out many, many, many times. That is, professional athletes, non-professional athletes experience a dramatic improvement in performance. You'll run faster, you'll run farther, you bike faster. In the case of Novak Djokovic, you'll hit harder. It's a wonderful effect.
If there's only one thing you could do to have a healthier body, it's have a healthier gut. Because there's nothing more powerful to protect you than a healthy microbiome. There's nothing more powerful to get optimal brain function than having a healthy microbiome.
The foods that your gut flora like are mostly plant foods. Vegetables, nuts and seeds, beans, real food, high fiber foods, and even special fibers, things like chia seeds, flax seeds, prebiotic types of foods, artichokes, various kinds of foods that actually can help fertilize the healthy bacteria. And the more you eat of those, the more healthy bacteria you have. The less sugar and processed food you have, the better your bacteria are.
Regardless of my profession, you know, everybody wants to be healthy, right? Everybody wants to thrive in well-being. Your body is structured in such a complex and intelligent way. It's smart enough to heal itself, to run itself, if you are feeding it with the right information through food, through your surrounding, through whatever you do in your life.
I grew up with 2 immigrant Indian parents that came to America really trusting of the American food system and really wanting to be American. And so me and my brother growing up, we could eat whatever we wanted when we were little. So if I wanted McDonald's, I got McDonald's. If I wanted Wendy's or Burger King, I would get those every single day if I wanted, because it was cheap, it was readily available, and it was food that we were eating. And we were, you know, I was a really picky child. I didn't want to eat the home-cooked Indian meal my mom was making for herself and my dad. It looked funny, it smelled funny. I mean, if I had known what I know now about all the medicinal curries and the health qualities of vegetarian cooking, I would be a totally different person. But as a result of my terrible food habits growing up and my lack of education about nutrition, it led to a lot of different health issues. And those health issues, overcoming asthma, eczema, allergies, endometriosis, having my appendix taken out, all of those episodes of being in and out of hospitals and doctors' offices really created passion in me to start taking back control of my health. And when I started to question all the things that I had been taught about food and started to do my own research into what was truly healthy, my mind was blown. I found out that the majority of food that I'd been eating for most of my life was dead, processed food, that it had been invented in a laboratory full of different chemicals, not even tested for human use. No wonder my body was sick, because it wasn't getting the nutrients it needed. One of my first investigations that I did was to compare products being sold in the United States to other parts of the world. And we found out that our own American companies were reformulating our favorite products to be healthier for citizens overseas and not for their own Americans. And one product was Kraft macaroni and cheese, which in Europe, if a product has artificial food dyes, it says may cause adverse effects on activity and attention in children. Well, Kraft Foods had figured that out, said, you know, we're not gonna put a warning label on our products overseas. We're just gonna take out that artificial food dye. To only take out artificial food dye for some citizens across the globe and not all citizens across the globe is completely immoral and unethical, because if they know that there's an ingredient that could be risky to children or could be harmful to children or contribute to ADHD or contribute to hyperactivity, I think food corporations have an obligation to make their products as healthy across the board. And so pointing out that discrepancy opened up a Pandora's box of food activism and social media frenzy of moms and dads and everyone sharing this information so voraciously to the point where these corporations couldn't do anything but listen to us and start to remove some of these chemicals.
I cringe at the ways that humans have managed to profit from these mistakes. Those mistakes could be the over-reliance on sugary drinks because of the very poor science that proved, never did by the way, prove that we need sugars to perform in sports. That's just simply not true.
I found out that over 40 years ago, the sports drink industry actually paid scientists to convince moms and convince the public that their child would not be hydrated enough during regular sports events, that their child needed this extra nourishment, and that without it, you were putting your child at risk. That is absolutely false. The majority of children out there who do sports activities need one thing, and that is water.
It's frightening. I mean, Pepsi makes Gatorade, and they market it as a health drink or as a sports drink or a hydration drink. And there's a few electrolytes in there, but it's high fructose corn syrup, it's dyes, some of them have trans fats in them. It's pretty frightening when you look at the composition of these sports drinks and actually what they're doing to our kids.
Sports drinks full of artificial food dye that's linked to hyperactivity in children. Hyperactivity that's now leading to more increases in ADHD. I can't tell you how many parents I have spoken to and have received letters from when they remove these artificial food dyes from their child's diet, how much their attention improves, how they get better at school. A lot of their allergies go away, their skin issues go away, because these artificial food dyes not only are linked to hyperactivity, they're linked to all sorts of different allergies in kids, as well as in lab rats, leukemia.
So there's incredible technology now being developed where you can swallow a camera that's actually the size of a little tiny vitamin capsule, and it gives you about 15 hours of footage from inside the digestive system. And what the researchers did was they gave one group of people a homemade meal. They actually made noodles from scratch, just from flour and water, and served it in a broth made from water and vegetables and salt and pepper. And then the other group, they were given bought noodles from the supermarket that come with a sachet that you add hot water to, and that was served with a blue sports drink. And then they swallowed these cameras to give the visuals of what then went on. And 4 hours after they swallowed the real food meal, all that was left was white fluff in the digestive system, and that's how it's supposed to be, really well broken down by that stage. But for the people who had the bought food meal, 4 hours after they ate it and swallowed the camera, you could still see the teeth marks in the noodles. So what that suggests is if you have food in your digestive system for 4 hours exposed to all of your digestive enzymes and it hasn't been broken down, it suggests that maybe there are substances in some of these processed foods that we have no ability to break down. But then further to that, the blue drink had actually dyed the noodles blue. And that's because the dye in the blue drink was derived from petroleum, and we have no ability inside of us to break down petrol. So a number of artificial substances and colours and sweeteners are created synthetically. And some of the substances that they're derived from, I have concerns about whether they even belong in the human body.
There's basically tens of teaspoons of sugar in those that is driving so much of the disease we see in America. And why are kids overweight? Why are kids struggling in school? Why are kids having health issues, academic issues, depression issues? It's really driven from the food they're eating. And these sports drinks seem like they're a health food, but they're actually one of the worst things on the market.
We've been hoodwinked about sugar. We've had companies who rely on sugar, like the big soda companies, paying scientists to say that saturated fat was making us unhealthy, causing heart disease, causing obesity, and not actual sugar. And so our eyes have been off the ball for many, many years, having a different villain, but really the villain has been sugar.
The biggest threat facing us today is invisible. It's food injustice. It's as a result of the food policies from our government that are promoting the production and the growing of food commodities that drive disease, in our allowing of food marketing to kids, in our having of subsidizations of sugar and processed food, and food stamps that buy $4 billion worth of soda a year for the poor. There's so many examples of ways in which our food policies are driving disease, they're driving poverty, they're driving violence, they're driving destruction of our environment, and they're even driving damage to our economy. And I think if we actually, as a society, step up and go, hey, wait a minute, we're not going to take it anymore. We have to look at the ways in which the food industry is driving behaviors to the production of food and the marketing of food and the food policies that are promoting these things. I think it can begin to turn the tide and get people to understand that we need to create a movement to stop the food injustice that's harming our communities, our families, and even our social fabric and our economy.
Brian Poole in coverage, and Brady lays it out perfectly.
If you look at Tom Brady, you know, his age at being a quarterback and this effective, we've never seen it before. And so for somebody who is actually living what he's preaching, I think it says a lot.
The fact that they can sell that, you know, to kids, that's poison for kids. But they keep doing it. That's just America, and that's what we've been conditioned to. So, you know, we believe that Frosted Flakes are actually food.
When Tom Brady said that Frosted Flakes wasn't fit for children and that Coca-Cola was poison, I screamed from the rooftops. I was like, finally, an athlete sticking up for children. And we need more role models and more athletes to take that plunge and to be that courageous. Because I tell you, it is important for the overall health of this world that we get the true message about food out to our children.
This whole idea that sugar is okay and carbs are okay and fat is bad came out of the 60s. And it wasn't by accident. There was a movement by the sugar industry and the lobby to actually vilify fat and to exonerate sugar. And they hired two scientists from Harvard, paid them the equivalent of $50,000 in today's dollars to write a review of the research at the time because sugar was being implicated in heart disease. And they wanted to discredit that theory. And based on that article published in the New England Journal in 1967, Science for Hire, they were actually able to catalyze this movement of low-fat, high carbs that's driven our obesity epidemic. And if you look at the obesity rates after the dietary guidelines came in 1980, it's a hockey stick up in obesity and diabetes. There's been a 7-fold increase in the rate of diabetes since 1980 around the world. And it's because of the plethora of sugar. Now we have about 152 pounds of sugar per person consumed in America per year and about 146 pounds of flour. That's about a pound a day of sugar and flour for every man, woman, and child. And our bodies are just not adapted to that. We know that there are really clear policies that change behavior. Michael Bloomberg tried to address this in New York City with taxing large sodas. He tried to get a sugar tax, he couldn't pass it through. Philadelphia has passed a sugar tax. Berkeley passed a sugar tax, Mexico has passed a sugar tax, and we know that those are effective in reducing obesity and preventing disease. So we actually have evidence that these work, and that at scale they can have an impact on choices, just like we tax smoking. In fact, sugar is the new tobacco.
Welcome back to Sky News coverage of the budget of 2016, and the Chancellor announcing a levy on companies that produce sugary, fizzy drinks. Something we weren't expecting, took us all by surprise. But did it come as a surprise to you?
Yep, 100%. This is a profound moment. This, I believe, will travel to Canada, Australia. We want to get Prime Ministers start doing stuff that actually affects child health. I think today's profound. It's about getting your hands around big business and caring like a parent, not a politician. So
yeah. Well, Jamie Oliver there we are, the fist bump there for victory in Jamie's campaign for a sugar tax.
The human body is so extraordinary. We're actually made up of about 50 trillion cells, which is a number that can so easily go over our heads with its enormity. So let me use time as an example to demonstrate the enormity of that. So 1 million seconds ago was 12 days ago, 1 billion seconds ago was 32 years ago, but 1 trillion seconds ago was 32,000 years ago. Now you have about 50 trillion cells that make you up. So the best way to picture that is 50 trillion tiny little circles, and they all want to talk to each other. But the only way they can communicate is when there are nutrients present. And I have grave concerns that there are just too many people not getting the nutrients that are essential for very basic cell-to-cell communication. We are essentially the health of our cells.
The things that really pack a wallop in restoring health all make evolutionary or adaptive sense. What if we revert back to those foods? So what did humans eat for the first 99.6% of our time on Earth? We gathered plants, fruit, of course, digging the dirt with our sticks and stones for underground tubers and roots, berries, nuts, shellfish, fish, of course, eggs, poultry, the things that humans instinctively regard as food. If we could return to a diet like that, we return to the health of primitive people, which is, there's a common fiction that primitive people die young. That can be true from injury and infection, but they don't die of diabetes, heart disease, dementia, and cancer.
If you look at our past, we were hunter-gatherers or gatherer-hunters, depending on the ecosystem that our ancestors lived in. We ate what the environment provided. If we lived near a lake, we ate fish. If we lived near the ocean, we were probably fishermen. If we lived in the tropics, we ate what was growing there. If we lived in the far north, we hunted. But we ate seeds, we ate insects, we ate nuts, we ate plants mostly. We had a very high fibrous diet because the original plants were much more high in fiber than plants are today. And the animal products we ate were mostly insects and grubs and things like that. But if we were able to catch or kill a larger animal, those were wild animals. And they were very low in fat. Today, though, animals are living in feedlots. They're living in factory farms. They are not allowed to move. They don't develop muscle tissue. They're very high in fat, and it's mostly storage fats, highly saturated fats. The animals are so miserable. In order to keep these animals alive under these conditions are so unnatural, they have to inject them with antibiotics or feed them antibiotics. Oftentimes use hormones as well, and other chemicals, insecticides to kill the flies that are around. When people say, oh, but our ancestors ate meat, and then they go down to the butcher or to McDonald's and buy that, they don't realize how different metabolically, nutritionally, energetically, that meat that they're buying is from the meat they're talking about our ancestors having eaten. Because what our ancestors ate were wild animals.
There's grass-fed organic beef, and there's grain-fed GMO conventional beef. There's good wheat, and there's bad wheat. You know, so I really think there's a difference between the products. And I think if we're looking at an ancient einkorn wheat that's sprouted and then slow cooked for a long period of time, like it was done in the Bible, like it was done in Chinese medicine, like it's done in the Middle East still today, if it's properly prepared, I believe it could be easy to digest. You know, there's studies showing that lacto-fermented, so fermented grains and gluten, actually may not affect celiacs like other types of grains. So I actually truly believe that the biggest thing is that we're not preparing our foods properly.
What you want to eat, though, is as many plants as possible, as many fruits and vegetables and seeds and nuts as you can. Some people do well with whole grains. Some people want to be vegans and eat no animal products. Some people want to eat some animal products. There's lots of variation here on what's a healthy diet. But if someone wants to eat animal products as part of their diet, the most ethical and the healthiest is wild fish, particularly fish that is low mercury, that is high in omega-3 fatty acids, wild salmon, sardines, herring, mackerel. These are fish that are low in heavy metals, low in contaminants, low in pesticide residues, and are high in the types of fats that our bodies need to thrive and our brains need to thrive. I think it's a marvelous thing that the food choices that are healthiest for us personally, that give us the most strength, the most vitality, the strongest immune systems, and therefore the least susceptibility to pathogens and infectious diseases, the strongest respiratory system. And so we can breathe deeply with life and enjoy the beauty of simply breathing. The same food choices that are so much healthier for us are also kinder to the animals and don't cause the same kind of environmental distress and damage.
Most people don't understand that what you put at the end of your fork is more powerful than any drug you'll find in a pill bottle. That food is not just like medicine, it is medicine. Food is a better drug than most drugs. It works faster, better, and is cheaper than any drug on the market, and it has no side effects except good ones.
Now, because of incredible advances in the world, we are living a lot longer. Our life expectancy has almost doubled since 1900. However, a big question to ponder is, are we living too short and dying too long? So we still want to be able to bend over and do up our own shoelaces in the second half of our life. You don't want your tummy to have gotten so big that you can no longer reach your feet, or your spine to have become so inflexible that you can no longer get to your toes. When you talk to people who can no longer put on their own shoes, they regret the choices in the first half of their life very much. So the choices we make today don't just impact how we feel and function today, they're going to impact what that entire future looks like. And the power to change that is in your hands and in your hands only. No one else can do it for you. It's just that you have to believe that you're worth taking care of.
In terms of the industry today, we're in a really unique place. We have more toxic processed food than ever in the history of the world. At the same time, we actually have more access to the world's superfoods than ever before.
So essentially what I recommend to people is eat foods that don't have nutrition fact labels, that don't have ingredient lists, and that don't have a barcode, because they're just food. An avocado doesn't have an ingredient list. An almond doesn't have a nutrition facts label, and eggs don't have a barcode. They're just food. So it's really not complicated. I do programs in large churches, and I make it very simple. I say, leave the food that man made, eat the food that God made. And any kindergarten kid can understand that.
But what I've seen in my clinical practice over nearly 20 years is that there are many people who benefit enormously with their physical health, with their happiness, with their performance, with their strength, just with how robust they feel in life when they make a change to how they eat that actually serves their own individual needs.
When you're on the diet that's ideal for you, eating becomes effortless. It becomes a way of life. Your cravings are stabilized, your body is full of energy, your reliance on outside prescription drugs starts to diminish, your reliance on outside therapies start to diminish, and you realize you can get just about everything you need from food. And until you get to that point, I say keep experimenting.
You can find incredible health that even to this day, I'm astounded at the conditions that reverse with this lifestyle. And every day it doesn't cease to amaze me. And that's why I do it with my day. I talk to people who've done this, and they even look different. So there's an actual transformation in appearance. And thankfully, it provides this kind of anti-aging or youth-preserving effect. And typically, they look 10, 20 years younger. It's a wonderful effect.
Of course, everybody is different, but one thing is for sure, you know, the living foods, the organic foods, non-processed foods are the best thing that you can fuel your body with.
This is what we're meant to eat. This is how we're meant to live, so that we can thrive and others can thrive, so that we can thrive and we don't destroy the world in the process. Then we want to live with respect for ourselves and others because it feels so good.
Going back to where the story all began. Do you want to hear the journey of this man? So maybe you're gonna call me crazy. A feeling I know it can be wrong. So one day you're gonna be my lover. Everybody run for cover. The ceiling's coming down. And one day we're gonna be forever. Everybody said we never. The ceiling's coming down. So stop, I'm gonna be there for you now. Don't go, I'm gonna be there for you now. I'll walk you through the sunshine and the rain. I believe that second chances come again. So maybe no longer call us crazy. A feeling I know it wasn't wrong. So one day you're gonna be my lover. Everybody run for cover. The ceiling's coming down. And one day we're gonna be forever. Everybody said we never. The ceiling's coming down.